In 1674, during routine repairs at the Tower of London, workers tore up a section of stone steps and paused. Behind a strangely rebuilt brick wall sealed in silence lay something no one expected: the skeletal remains of two small children, curled together, hidden away as if they had never existed. There was no plaque, no record, no royal burial, just bones beneath the stone bones that whispered of a story the crown never told. Historians would call them the princes in the tower, but for centuries, the real horror wasn't who they were. It was what might have happened to them before they died. Richard of Shrewsbury was never meant to be king. He was the spare, the quiet, younger brother born to support the heir, Edward V. But in the twisted machinery of royal power, even a child without a crown could be seen as a threat. At just 9 years old, Richard had already been granted the prestigious title of Duke of York. He wore fine velvet. He smiled in court portraits. But behind the formality was a boy, lively, clever, and dangerously close to the throne. His bloodline made him valuable. His existence made him inconvenient. And when his father, King Edward IV, died suddenly, Richard wasn't just a younger brother anymore. He was a pawn, a liability, and in the eyes of some, a problem best removed. They said it was for their protection. That's what the Royal Council claimed when Edward V and his little brother Richard were moved into the Tower of London in 1483. A secure fortress, they said, a place fit for a future king and his loyal sibling. But the tower had a darker reputation, one it had earned over centuries. It wasn't just where threats were locked away, it was where secrets were buried. The two princes were given rooms in the inner ward with guards at every entrance. At first, they were seen walking the grounds waving to onlookers. Then, the sighting stopped. The windows stayed closed, the laughter faded, and the tower became silent again. History would remember the place as a royal residence. But for these boys, it may have been something else entirely: a royal coffin with stone walls and no way out. While the young princes were locked inside the tower, their uncle smiled. Richard, Duke of Gloucester, moved swiftly and decisively. He declared their father's marriage illegitimate. Their claim to the throne? Erased. Parliament nodded. The church remained silent. Weeks after the boys disappeared from public view, Richard crowned himself king. To the outside world, he was calm, dutiful, smiling. A king reluctantly accepting a burden of fate. But behind that composed face was a man whose path to power had been cleared conveniently and completely. He never spoke of the boys again. No funerals, no inquiries, no royal mourning. The tower was quiet. The new king was confident. And England, frightened and exhausted, looked the other way. History would debate Richard's innocence for centuries. But one truth remains: he gained everything the moment they were gone. At first, there were whisper sightings of the princes playing in the courtyard, their laughter echoing faintly through the tower grounds. Servants brought meals. A tutor arrived once, a physician, briefly, and then nothing. No more sightings, no more footsteps, no more voices. The food delivery stopped. The guards rotated without speaking. The shutters closed, and the tower swallowed their presence whole. London grew uneasy. Some asked questions, but only once. Rumors flickered like candlelight that the boys had fallen ill, had been moved elsewhere, had been sent away. But no official word came, no letters, no visits. They had not died publicly. They had not been seen escaping. They had simply vanished. And in royal England, a vanishing could be far more convenient than a death. Years later, long after the tower had new tenants and new kings, strange tales began to surface. A former guard confessed on his deathbed he'd heard sounds in the night, soft tapping, like fingers against stone, faint crying, then silence, A maid swore she'd seen a servant emerge pale and trembling, refusing to return to the prince's wing. He never spoke of what he saw. He simply left the tower and never came back. Some whispered that the walls themselves seemed disturbed, stones slightly shifted, a patch of mortar newer than the rest. But no one investigated. No one wanted to. In royal circles, fear was a form of loyalty, and silence was survival. The tower held its secrets. The crown demanded obedience, and somewhere beneath it all, the memory of two frightened boys, possibly awake, possibly aware, lingered in cold stone. There was no royal decree, no priest summoned, no procession through Westminster, but someone, at some point, made a decision. Two small bodies were hidden behind stone, tucked away beneath the staircase in the tower, not buried with dignity, not mourned as princes, just placed, as if to disappear them forever. The work was quiet, quick, possibly done in the dark. One or two men, perhaps, sworn to secrecy or terrified into it. No inscriptions marked the spot, no mention in the records. Their final moments, like their final resting place, were sealed behind a wall no one was meant to question. It wasn't just a burial, it was an erasure. The kind of burial you give not to the dead, but to the inconvenient. No one was punished. No investigation was ordered, and the new king, Richard III, spoke not a single word about his missing nephews. The nobles who once pledged loyalty to Edward IV adjusted their allegiance. The church, curiously devout, offered no inquiry. Even foreign envoys, though suspicious, chose not to press. England had a king, and questioning how he got there was bad for business. In this silence, power flourished. Crowns were secured, alliances held. The tower remained locked, and its ghost politely unacknowledged. And so, the disappearance of Richard of Shrewsbury became more than a tragedy. It became a test. One the court failed, one history failed, and one the stones of the tower still remember, even if the crown does not. Nearly 2 centuries later, the tower stirred once more. In 1674, workers demolishing a staircase beneath the White Tower broke into an unexpected cavity. Inside, entangled in a shallow pit of dust and rubble, lay 2 small human skeletons side by side. No clothing survived, no royal seal, just bones, brittle and silent. The discovery was brief, the burial even briefer. The remains were quietly reinterred in Westminster Abbey under the title, The Princes in the Tower. There was no investigation, no forensic inquiry, not in 1674, not in the centuries that followed. Requests to examine the bones have been made, all denied, because sometimes history prefers its mysteries undisturbed. But the truth has a strange habit. It waits, in the dust, in the stone, and in the bones that once belonged to a boy named Richard. Richard of Shrewsbury never ruled, never fought in war, never defied the crown. He was just a child born into the wrong moment, carrying a name that made others nervous. And for that, he vanished. His story isn't just about a disappearance. It's about what happens when power becomes afraid. When a throne decides that blood ties mean less than political survival. When silence, stone, and fear are more effective than any blade. Centuries later, his bones still lie beneath Westminster. No trial, no justice, just a name whispered in footnotes and speculation. Rotten Thrones doesn't ask who killed him. It asks, how many people let it happen, and how many more, even now, prefer it that way?